push-pull the mag?
Push-pull, it is a requirement. It's a requirement. Joel has been out of the military for so long, he's forgot the simple basics of push-pull. Push the magazine in, pull the magazine out. When I push and I pull and I got it seated, then I'm good. Push-pull, it's a f***ing requirement. Today on American Outlaw, the Mk12 or the Special Purpose Rifle. It depends if you follow the Navy side more or the Army side more. Nobody's wrong. But I have the entire program with us right now, and I would say probably the Mk12 came to, at least my knowledge, through the book Lone Survivor, Marcus Luttrell.
Yep.
I think that's where everybody kind of heard about it, right?
Yeah, so I mean, like, that's when you saw the movie adaptation, and so then you would see a rifle, you know, similar to this one, obviously not this paint scheme, but you saw the Knight's rail, you saw the loopholed scope, you know, the selector, I mean, you saw the Mk2. It was very iconic because it was that early GWAT, and so like when movies started being made, they actually went to a really good prop house and they took pictures from their deployment and made those rifles. So everyone saw that and it was like, that's the rifle I need to build. I need to build Axelsons, or I need to build Marcus's. I want to build Mike Murphy's. And so that's kind of where, you know, like Black Hawk Down, you know, you see them on screen, and before then you just read it in the book, and you're like, what are they carrying? Because there wasn't that many pictures. Well, now the Mk12, I mean, you go to the internet and type in Mk12, it's everywhere. And so you get to see kind of the evolution of the platform. You just can't quantify how important this weapon system is now, especially then when you translate that to the commercial market with low power variable optics, people shooting matches and stuff. It starts from this program.
I don't think any of these rifles are issued anymore at all. I don't know of anybody that's used them in years.
I think the official program ended sometime in the late 2000s, like 2012. They were still issued and used, but they weren't. The program was no longer around. Like the SPR program had ended. Like I know there are some Mod H's floating around. You do see sometimes in the sniper competitions, you'll see a Mod 1, but it'll have like a modern scope on it. And so that scope is like minute of man. And now that people are putting night forces and putting, you know, modern scopes on these old platforms because they shoot, you know, an 18-inch AR with 77 grain, it's really tough to beat at 600 yards.
So guys, a couple of things as we start going through these rifles. I want you to know this. These are all 20 to 25-ish year old rifles. When I think of a 20-year-old rifle, I'm still thinking like Vietnam era triangle stock, or forearm. And now, no, it's the famous Mk12 that is that 25.
So like 2004, you know, 2002, 2003, right in there is kind of like the SPR program was in its infancy. The military was like, how can we make ourselves more lethal other than the 14.5? And then you start seeing the 18-inch, you see the 16-inch, and then the 15.1. And so that lethality out to 600, 700 yards, or could you shoot farther? Plenty of guys died at long distance due to this platform.
Whenever you're looking at rifles and kind of the reason that these lessons, I would say, are written in blood, they started to have to make more daylight fighting. You know, the Afghanis were fighting more in the daytime.
Yep.
Even the Iraqis fighting more in the daytime. In Iraq, where they were fighting, it's urban combat, house to house, moving through. We spent a lot of time over there in the Baghdad, Fallujah area, and there's a lot of big walls and a lot of urban fighting.
Yep.
The furthest shots are just a couple hundred meters down streets, right? And you were also fighting an enemy that didn't really want to fight you. They would just turn their AK around the corner and blow a magazine and turn and run, right?
Yep.
And then you went to the Afghanis, who had been fighting Russians for 2 decades before they started fighting us. And so they were getting better at engaging from further distances. Mm-hmm. And so at the beginning of this time, what you guys probably don't know is there wasn't like the 4 primes, ADS, TSSI, Quantico Tactical. You guys probably don't even know who they are. They're the guys that sell to the military now as a whole. Back then they had cow money. We talked about that in another video we had, but cost of war money, where you could see guys literally going in the early 2000s and them saying, hey, we're going on a deployment. We don't even know what optics we have, but we know that the guys that are over there now say they need to be able to shoot further. So they'd go to Cabela's or Bass Pro or any of these stores back then. What was some of those, like TG&Y and Kmart back then?
Yep.
And they would buy whatever was on the shelf that they thought would work, and then they would take essentially a hunting rifle scope over.
Yep.
So that's how you have today, like your Vortex 1 to 10 or your Trijicon 1 to 8 VCOG. the new Night Force 1-8, those things came about through a lot of trial and error that happened kind of right here with these guns. Let's start with the Mod 0, because this was the first of them, correct?
Yeah, so the Army program was the Special Purpose Rifle program, and so this one is not the early ones. So the really early ones, they had a PRI tube, but they had a little bit different profiling. This is what is called a Gen 3 tube. So they had gone through a Gen 1, Gen 2 tube before they ultimately landed on this tube. This was actually a very short-lived rifle in the Mark 12 or SPR program, because right on its heels was the quad rail. So there are pictures of early GWAT guys that are running Mod 1s or Mod 0s. But then you definitely see a lot more as Knights won the contract for the rail system. And so you kind of saw this one, it did see combat, it did see action, but it wasn't there long like the battle history of this one.
All right, so there are a couple of unique things on this Mod 0. One of them, let's just start right here with the optic, because there are multiple optics on these that are clone correct.
Yep.
And so you actually have the hardest one to find.
So yeah, so this is the Leupold Mark IV 3-9 by 36. And then you'll notice on the turrets here it's 62 grain. 77 grain wasn't quite a thing in the early SPR program. They were still developing that round. Now I think the guys with Velcros and beards might have had it, but Big Army hadn't gotten the 77 grain, so this turret is set for 62 grain, which was the green tip stuff. So yeah, so this optic is tougher to find now because it slowly went away and they went to the 2.5 to 8. It is in the arms 22 medium rings with the no lever stops, and so trying to find all the period correct parts. The really hard part of this rifle is this actual arms rail here. They don't make this rail anymore, and this is the PEC rail. So normally it's got a mount here for a PEC 2, but because of how low the scope is, you typically find it here on the side of the rifle. Not that the scope won't look past it, but people just didn't want to have they didn't want to have that shadow. The difference here between this and say the Mod 1 is the flip up sight is actually on the barrel, and then you've got a rear sight here. So you have backup iron sights as well, which are PRI front sight and an Arms 40 rear sight, Harris bipod, ergo grip, and Badger Ordnance gas buster charging handle. And then the rest of it was pretty typical. It would have been an A1 profile M16 lower, full auto with a match trigger. This one happens to have a Knight's Armament 2-stage, or no, this one has a Geisley in it. Probably didn't happen. They probably had either a tuned Colt trigger or they were getting the early Knights triggers. And then a fixed stock. All of the SPR program, all the lowers were basically archive lowers that they pulled out of storage and built uppers for. That's why they're all M16A1s.
So one of the things, again, from back in the early days of GWAT, for those of you who don't know, it's Global War on Terror. Right after 9/11, I know some of you youngins are out there, we're old fuds now. Right after 9/11, this war kicks off. Combat completely changed from us, from like a near peer to almost more like police SWAT style tactics. A lot of things changed, and what you would find back then was not like what you see now. Now you see dudes and all of their kit matches exactly, and all of their guns from guy to guy pretty much is the same. They might set it up a little different. Back then with that cow money, man, you could see anything on these guns. So when you're cloning it for yourself, what I would recommend you do is, I didn't even ever think about this until I was talking to Joel over the last couple of days. Find a clone picture or something that was significant about that rifle that you can find on the internet, and then clone to that one, and you're gonna see that there are so many different options and so many different parts that you don't have to just stick to some program of record, because you could put whatever you wanted on there. So there's kind of no wrong answers as you build these. Let's talk about the first silencers that these guys had on them.
The original suppressors would have been an Ops Model 12. You've got a collar system, and then you've got a flash hider or a muzzle brake in here, and it threads on and then seats against this collar. And then so basically what that does is it makes your POI shift almost negligible. So you could have this rifle, you could shoot it unsuppressed, shoot it suppressed, and not have to worry about a POI shift. Super quiet. I would argue that this style of suppressor is probably the quietest 5.56 suppressor on the market. when you shoot these guns, and then say you shoot like say maybe a Surefire or more of a duty can, you kind of get that pop. These are very enjoyable to sit behind and shoot for hours. At the shooter ear or even at your spotter or somebody next to you, they don't need ear pro. They do have a first round crack like every suppressor, but after that it's really enjoyable to shoot these guns.
So I think every can here is an Allen. Nope, this is an Otter Creek.
Yep, so I got 2 Otter Creeks and Allen, and then you have an Allen as well. So I got 2 and 2.
2 and 2. So both of them I would consider clone correct. I think the Otter Creek is a little lighter than the Allen, right?
So the Otter Creek is made out of titanium and Inconel, so that it's 20% lighter. So as far as the tube is titanium, where traditionally the Allen cans, they're steel. And so you do get a little bit, they are a little bit lighter, and they do have a little bit of a different tone. Hopefully we'll be able to pick that up, because we can shoot an Allen and shoot an Otter Creek, and you should hear a slight tone difference, but still hearing safe.
All right, the Mk12 Mod 0. Let's go shoot it. By far, this is the most pleasant of all of them to shoot. By far. From the Mod 1, we step into the Mod H, or the Holland. This one's kind of cool. Tell us a little history about the Holland and why did they go with this?
What I kind of understand about the Holland rifle is the namesake, Steve Holland, wasn't a big Knights Armament fan, wasn't a big quad rail fan, and liked having the PRI, kind of liked what it did, and an 18-inch gun to a 16-inch gun, and was still able to achieve the accuracy almost identical to an 18-inch gun. So his guys could have a little bit smaller package, especially moving in and out of vehicles, special operations. A lot of times their vehicles didn't have doors, easier to get out. This is kind of a cumbersome weapon system when it's got the suppressor on it. If this doesn't have the suppressor on it, it's no bigger than, say, an M16. So it's a cool platform, and only 5th Group Special Forces ran the Mod H. The cool thing about it is it had kind of a directive, and it had kind of a setup way, but you see all kinds of different things. You see CTR stocks, you see SOP mod stocks, you see fixed stocks, you see the ACE stock. The base rifle literally was a Mod 0 with a 16-inch barrel as opposed to an 18-inch barrel. And then other than that, it was kind of run what you brung. So you started seeing different foregrips, different bipods, an upgrade in the laser. So you went from the PEC 2 to a PEC 15. Had the Recce rail, so very similar, but now you can still achieve that eye relief with your optic. A lot of in the wild pictures, you'll see it actually has an SR25 or M110 optic on it, so it's got the 3.5 to 10.
So wait a minute, I gotta tell you guys, this is crazy. Pretty much everybody now, sniper community, shoots mil reticle, mil turrets, right? Mil adjustments, mil. Back in the day, we used to shoot MOA mil. So we'd mill with mil dots or a TMR, and we would shoot MOA on everything else, on the turrets. So one of the things that, there were 3 different scopes when Leupold came out with this Mark IV. They were the king at this time. Like I think Night Force had started coming in, but just barely. They had the M1, which was quarter minute, the M2, which is this one, which is half minute, and then the M3, which is 1 minute.
So, and the big difference here is, so you've got 1 minute on elevation and half. So they would often call that minute a man. This is half.
Half.
So on the 3 to 9s and 2.5 to 8s, it was half and 1. On the 3.5 to 10s, it was half and half.
Okay.
This was slightly different than this because it was on a 308.
Right.
Like we discussed last night.
This is the cool part. I did not know this. You would only know this with your specific background of being the master gunsmith.
The ballistic data from a 77 grain in a 5.56 to a 175 grain or even 168 grain 308 out to, I think, just south of 700 yards is identical ballistically.
It really is. And I was like, when he said that, I was tired last night. I was like, whatever, dude, that doesn't even make sense. And so I pulled out my ballistic calculators of both guns that I have, and I was like, they're 0.2 of a mil off of each other all the way out, and at 700 it starts losing it. So that is really cool that you could use a 308 scope on a 5.56 shooting the. I know you guys really busted my balls on a couple of those shorts I did where I said 55 grain ammo isn't what anybody shoots, and everybody was like, "We've been killing people with 55." No, you haven't, because nobody used it. Nobody uses it today, and they all shoot 77 grain or 70 grain Barnes. Like, anyway, I thought that was a really cool thing. So when I first started shooting long range shooting in the early 2000s, our choice was one of these M scopes, the M1, the M2, or the M3.
Yep.
The M2 was what everybody wanted, and I remember it big from GPS Sniper School and Norm Chandler's stuff.
Yep.
Was okay. It's half and half, where the other one would have been a quarter minute, and then they had the 1 minute scope.
Yep.
Who did the 1 minute scope? I think, did Army take that ever?
You had different knobs, and so like you had a castle knob, which I want to say was the M1, so that was an exposed turret.
Yep, and that was quarter minute.
That was quarter minute, and then the M2s you had the
Was half minute.
half minute.
I don't remember what the M3 was, but I do remember that it was 1 minute, 1 minute.
Yep.
And I remember everybody being like, "That's so dumb, 1 minute, 1 minute." All right, so we went too far down that. I just thought that was a cool rabbit trail. So tell us more about this Holland rifle.
This is, like I said, a clone. There's lots of pictures of it online, and so I went after that one. So it's a unique clone to me, 80% Colt lower that I finished out. Colt lower parts kit. This one actually has a Geisley SSA in it, which a lot of the Mod 1s and the Hollands and stuff received. The Knights trigger. It wasn't that it was a bad trigger, it was just that you didn't have any adjustment in the SSAs. Like the Knights, if the Loctite broke free, it would change very quickly. So this one has the Geisley. It's got a Badger Ordnance charging handle, BCM foregrip. It's got an offset doctor and Night Force rings, and then the loopholed Mark IV 3.5 to 10 M110 optic. Then a change in the bipod, you can see the difference here. It's got the Atlas bipod.
One of the things, guys, is setting rifles up for you. You can see that Joel has it set up where he can turn on his laser. Remember, they were using these to fight way more in the daytime than at nighttime, but you still might have to fight with them at nighttime. And this is where you kind of start to see the offset 45. What year did this come out? Do you remember?
So this would have been early 2000s.
At the time, now you're like, hey, the offset optic back then, that was weird. These scopes all start off, let's see, what does this one starts off at 2? It starts off at 3.5. This one starts off at 3. This one we'll get to in a minute starts off at 2, but they didn't have a true 1 power LPVO. Most of them, I think, were 3s, right? 3x9, 3x. That's where the offset really started to come into play, especially if you were coming into a hide site, or you're coming, a lot of stuff was inside the city still, so you might have to switch and fight with it. So that's where this started to come in. At some point in time, drops the Mark 12 Mod 1.
Yep.
In what part of the world did they use this weird looking camo?
So that is the Rhodesian baby green and yellow paint scheme. I'm a big history buff. I'm a big fan of the Bush War. The Mark 12 obviously never served there. This was more of my having fun with the clone community. I took a very spot-on Mark 12 Mod 1 and painted the way I like it. It's my ode to like two conflicts, if you will. Being a GWAT veteran myself, but also being a history buff, I was like, why not paint one of my modern guns in an old usable paint scheme? So ultimate cloner blasphemy. Talk to us about this one. What parts kit do you have on this one? So this one is very similar. I built this one from a parts kit, Colt CAF marked upper, Badger Ordnance charging handle, 80% lower, completed with Colt markings, Knights armament, ambi selector. This one does have the Knights 2-stage in it. I just kind of kept the theme with all the Knights parts. The Knights rail, which is like hen's teeth right now. They did just drop a few more. Hopefully they'll keep making them. A Douglas 18-inch 1-in-7 barrel, finished off with Allen Engineering hardware, and then I've got an Otter Creek OCM5. PEC 2, you would see these with PECs. Specifically, the Marine Corps had a lot of PEC 2s, but you will see them with PEC 15s, and you'll even see some with LA 5s. Harris bipod. Then back again here to the Arms 22 high rings, because you no longer have that rail, and then a 3-9 loophole Mark IV. Fixed stock, and then the Eagle Taz 1 sling, which is 2-point into a 3-point sling. So that was what was issued on this gun.
You know, one of the cool things that I just realized was the difference in the medium rings on this one because of the arms rail, and then the high rings because they didn't have the rail.
Yep.
One of the things that I will tell you guys, especially because this one's better for me, but as I start looking at some of these rings, it's really hard to get your face down on them because it's just not how we are shooting anymore because all of the new Unity high mounts, that kind of thing. So you really got to get that chickbunk cheek way down on these guns. And so I'm anxious to see what some of the iBox problems may bring, or, you know, it would be cool to talk to a few old team guys from back then and find out what those iBox problems were. But that is a cool feature on this.
Then to finish it off was the ergo grip, which was kind of consistent. So you will see a lot of similarities between the 1 and the 0. At the time, there wasn't a lot of aftermarket stuff still. There wasn't a lot of free float rails like the PRI or the Knights. And this is before Daniel Defense. This is before, like, Daniel Defense was Marty Daniel in his garage making rails.
Yeah.
And so then it progresses. So at the time, it was Knights Armament.
So we have the Seal Recce rifle, which Joel built for me. Guys, I took almost 2 years to get all these parts. I got the Allen Engineering. So Allen Engineering, I know a lot of people said are going out of business. You can still buy Allen Engineering cans right now.
So Ron Allen is kind of like retired. He's still doing stuff, but Trajectory Arms is now the new Allen Engineering, and they've got a partnership with Ron. And so now they're producing cans all the way. They're doing 30 cal cans, the 5.56 cans. They're doing the M24 suppressors. So no change, just more of modernizing the process and, you know, getting cans out quicker, because there was about a 3-year backlog with Ron because Ron made all the cans. So now that he's kind of let those reins down, Allen Engineering is now able to produce cans very quickly, and the quality is no different than if Ron made it or if Alex and his guys made it. So
yeah, pretty awesome can. I think when Alex sent me this one, it's one of the very first ones that were coming out.
Alex and his crew have spent a lot of time with Ron, going and actually sitting down, and so it's a great partnership, and I would not be afraid to own a new production Allen can by any means.
I love this can. And I'll tell you this, I don't just look at this can as it has to be a cloner can. I'd put this on any rifle that I had right now and it'll be just fine. I got a full power PEC on this. We went back and forth because I've also got a PEC too, and because Joel's the master cloner, we decided that a PEC 15 is probably more period correct for this.
Well, yeah, so this is a step up in evolution. So you've got a 15-1 barrel as opposed to an 18-inch.
Right, and they went from Douglas to
Lilja with a carbine gas system as opposed to a rifle length gas system. So you see a lot of different gas systems, and they're trying to figure out good quality dwell time. Well, they figured with a 15-inch barrel you could run a carbine length because that's what you would have on a 14.5, so it's only a little bit longer, so you didn't have to have your gas block all the way out here.
Now I can tell you guys, at this time when this rifle was coming out, the 14.5 mid-length, I don't even think that was a thing, right?
I don't believe so.
I don't think that was a thing. Okay, so going down, I found one of the Knights Armament rails that I didn't have to pay an arm and a leg for. I got a Colt bolt in this, a Colt, what is this one? Keyhole upper,
So
which is
Cerro upper, yep.
Cerro upper. I've got the property of, it was one of the reproduction
Colt lowers.
Colt lowers, and I put the Geisley SSAE trigger in it.
Yep, so 3.5 pound.
These are actual titanium Night Force rings. I know a lot of people change the stocks. The SOPMOD stock is my favorite stock.
Yeah.
It's got the PRI gas buster charging handle. The reason they did the gas buster charging is because gas was literally coming out of the back of these really bad. And so you just see that they put it just a little bit higher so that the gas wouldn't come back and get in your face as much.
And you'll find too with these platforms, they're not overly gassy to the shooter because you're not shooting them like CQBR or shooting them like a fast, like a 416 or something. These are precision shots, maybe 1 or 2 shot follow-up. So like the gas thing was never really a thing with these. You never really had that problem as the shooter. So
yeah, just like everybody does, you know, ounces equal pounds, pounds equal pain. So when you are looking at this and you're saying, I'm humping this through the mountains and I want to start humping this through the mountains, this is, shoot, quite a bit lighter actually.
Yeah.
I don't know how much, but quite a bit lighter. So they try to make it as light as they could, and all of them shoot incredible. All of them are shooting somewhere around 3/4 minute groups. They're great guns. They're great intermediate sniper rifles.
what's kind of cool is you got Lilja, Douglas, Noveski, and Douglas. You know, so you got like a good mix of quality barrels, and you know, all 1 in 7, and all holding that accuracy standard with the 77 grain SPR or the 77 grain Mark 262.
Yeah. And guys, listen, not one of these is out of date enough that for whatever situation you might find yourself in where you needed a rifle to defend yourself, your property, or your family, or maybe this country, all of these are great examples and still would use them today with no issues. My personal favorite, the reason it's my personal favorite is because it took me 2 years to find the parts, the Seal Recce rifle. I had to pry it out of Joel's hands because he didn't want to give it to me because these 3 are his and this would have completed his collection. And so, do you think it's worth a trade? Like, I give you this, you give me these 3?
Well, we'll talk.
We'll talk. All right, let's go shoot this one. Well, Joel, I appreciate you coming out, dude. So you're starting a YouTube channel, right?
Yes.
What is it called?
It's going to be called Otter Weapon Works. It's going to mirror my IG page.
All right, so we can find you on Instagram where?
Otter_weapon_works, WORX.
All right, so we just did a lot of work. He's got probably 50-ish clones that are the most incredible clones I've ever seen. Actually, have my buddy from the War Club. We did it at his shop, and he was like, I've never seen so much awesomeness in my shop at once. Neither have I. And so he's going to be breaking down each of his, where to find them, what parts are correct, what parts aren't correct. And I mean, over the next year, you're going to see some incredible content. So do me a favor, like, subscribe, hit the bell notifications here, of course, and go see Joel's channel. We're going to link it below, and check out Otter Weapon Works because he's the clone master and he's going to teach you how to do it.